Feeling like an outsider is not a defect in your personality. It is often a profound signal from your unconscious that you are refusing to trade your authenticity for a seat at the table. Carl Jung famously noted that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Most people find belonging by wearing a persona, a social mask that fits the expectations of the group. If you feel like an outsider, it is likely because your internal drive for individuation is stronger than your desire to conform. You are essentially a square peg refusing to sand down your edges just to fit into a round hole, and while that creates loneliness, it also creates a person of depth. This feeling often stems from what psychologists call cognitive or emotional dissonance. You walk into a room and hear the small talk, the superficial scripts, and the unspoken rules, and your brain simply refuses to engage. You aren't being difficult. You are experiencing a clash between your inner truth and the social script. To you, the right way to act feels like a lie, and the cost of fitting in, losing yourself, is a price you are subconsciously unwilling to pay. You feel like an outsider because you are watching the play from the wings rather than acting in it, making you a witness to the theater of human behavior. From a developmental perspective, this often traces back to the black sheep or identified patient role within a family system. If you grew up in a family where certain truths were suppressed or emotions were ignored, and you were the one who felt those things deeply, you were labeled as the outsider early on. You became the other so the rest of the family could feel normal. You carried that label into adulthood, and now, your brain scans every social environment for evidence that you don't belong, confirming a story that was written for you before you even knew how to speak. There's also the concept of high sensitivity or the orchid child dynamic. Some people are neurologically wired to process information and emotions more deeply than the average person. When you are in a group of dandelions, people who can thrive anywhere and don't overthink their surroundings, you feel like a different species. You notice the subtle tension in the room, the fake smile on a coworker's face, or the lack of meaning in a conversation. Because you are processing at a different frequency, you feel isolated, as if you're the only one seeing the world in high definition, while everyone else is content with low-resolution reality. Jung believed that the outsider is often a person who carries the unlived life of the collective. Because you don't fit into the narrow boxes of society, you're forced to explore the shadow and the fringes of human experience. This is where art, innovation, and deep wisdom are found. Being an outsider is the tax you pay for having an original mind. The loneliness you feel isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a hunger of the soul looking for a tribe that values being overperforming. The moment you stop trying to bridge the gap between yourself and the group, and instead start deepening the connection between yourself and your truth, the world begins to meet you on your own terms. You are likely suffering from what Abraham Maslow might call a metapathology, a spiritual sickness that comes when your higher needs for truth, beauty, and justice aren't being met by your environment. When you look at the wrongness of the world and feel a deep sense of alienation, it's because your internal compass is set to a higher standard of integrity than the world around you. This makes the mundane social games feel not just boring, but corrosive. You feel like an outsider because you are a searcher in a world of settlers. While they're looking for comfort, you are looking for meaning, and those two paths rarely cross in the middle of a crowded room. Alfred Adler spoke extensively about the feeling of inferiority and the striving for superiority. If you feel like an outsider, you might be caught in the middle of this tension. You feel less than because you can't do the simple things others do so easily, like small talk or mindless conformity. But you also feel more than because you perceive a depth that they seem to ignore. This creates a painful oscillation between feeling like a freak and feeling like a genius. To heal this, you have to realize that your outsider status isn't a hierarchy. It's a location. You're simply standing in a different part of the forest, and the people at the edge cannot see the things you see from the center. Consider the hero's journey, as described by Joseph Campbell. Every hero begins as an outsider. The call to adventure always starts with feeling that this place is no longer enough, or I don't fit here anymore. If you felt perfectly at home in your current environment, you would never be forced to grow. The ache of being an outsider is the friction required to launch you into your own life. It is a sacred wound that prevents you from falling asleep in a life that is too small for you. Your alienation is actually your protection. It keeps you from becoming a permanent resident in a world that doesn't deserve your full potential. We must also address existential isolation. Irvin Yalom argued that no matter how close we are to others, there's a gap that can never be fully bridged. Most people distract themselves from this truth with constant noise and shallow connection. As an outsider, you are simply more aware of the gap. You have a lower tolerance for the illusion of togetherness. While others are playing house or career or socialite, you're staring at the stars and feeling the vastness of the universe. Your outsider status is a sign of intellectual honesty. You refuse to pretend the gap isn't there, and that honesty makes you a threat to the comfort of the crowd. Finally, look at the concept of the wounded healer. Often, those who feel most alienated are the ones who eventually become the most capable of helping others. Because you have had to navigate the world without a map, you have developed a unique internal navigation system. You have had to build your own identity from scratch because the one society offered you didn't fit. This makes you dangerous to the status quo, but essential to the future. The wrongness you feel is the birth pains of a new version of yourself. Stop trying to find the door back into the group. Start building the house where people like you are finally welcome.